Our guest today is Matt Purcell. Matt is a youth worker, a speaker, motivator, spends much of his time reaching out to teenagers and families with what I think I call a positive message of self-worth and hope. Matt, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Keith. Good to be here.
Yeah, now, originally you come from South Korea, but you were raised by Australians.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, when I was old enough to understand, I looked at myself in the mirror and I was like, yeah, okay, I look like that. And I looked at my mum and dad, and my dad looks like you a bit, you know, like he's got white skin, and my mum's Anglo-Saxon too. She's got white skin. And I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, yes.
And they said, you're adopted. You're an adopted child. I'm like, okay, that's cool. I don't really care.
They told you that as a response to a question that you asked them?
Yeah. I asked one day, you know, what's the difference here? And they said, well, you're adopted. And it didn't bother me at all.
So let me go to school and to peers. What was that like in that context, to know that? Yeah,
students, they sometimes are brutally honest, aren't they? They like to point out observations about your hair or about your parents not looking like you, for my case. And they were like, how come you don't look like your mum and dad? And I'm like, well, don't worry about it. You don't talk about my mum. And it started causing a little bit of questions in my mind. But rest assured, I was very secure as a kid overall, because they loved me and they supported me with my adoption questions and all that.
Did it start to just tingle a little bit around the edges about self-worth or those sort of things?
It more opened up, I say, a can of worms when my parents decided to separate when I was 6. And I think all of that, my whole life started to become a big question, you know, about who I am, and my adoption was definitely one of those things, those subjects I wanted to uncover more. And
so what did you find out? Did you find out some things?
Yeah, years later, I was told a story by my mum and dad that I was left in a phone box in Korea originally, and I found out that actually wasn't true. I went over to Korea to do some music in 2010, and I visited the orphanage I was from, and they sat me down and they pulled out, you know, a 20-something-year-old photo album with my photos in it, and they told me this story, Keith. They said that, Matt, your biological mother was from the country, from Seoul, so about 4 hours in the rural town from Seoul, and your biological father was a guy who delivered goods out to the farms, and they met one night, he slept over and went on his own way, and she didn't know she was actually pregnant at all. Like, she had no mother. Her mother passed away when she was a young girl, and she had very little education. So she didn't know that she was pregnant, and her description was 5'1", I'm very short, 5'1", and they said she was quite fat. And I'm like, fat? What, can you say curvy? Can you say not? But it described her description, because she didn't know actually she was pregnant because of her size as well.
Sure.
And she actually was in the barn, and she was hit with terrible labour pains, and I can't imagine how terrified she was.
So has this background, has it informed the way that you approach working with young people?
Yeah, it's definitely. Because I guess my past doesn't have to equal my future. You know, in my story, that's what I look like. Because I was, my birth mother gave birth to me on the barn floor and handed me over to Australian parents. And one perspective could look at that and go, well, I'm a mistake. You know, I wasn't wanted. But another perspective could look at, I was chosen. And
so as a Christian leader trying to work with young people, what message do you draw from it?
That, I know that I'm chosen no matter what past I've got, because in the Bible it talks about adoption a lot. It talks about, in Ephesians 1, it talks about how before God even made the earth, he chosen us. Yes. And that means being adopted means your name changed. Like my name was actually Byongdong-gyu in Korea, which would have meant orphan or like poor person, because I wasn't born in wedlock. So my name is now changed to Matt Purcell, and I get to inherit everything my father and mother has in here because they chose me, not because I earned it. And that's where true value comes from.
Matt Purcell, what do you actually do with young people then? Tell us a bit about that.
So I'm a life coach in Australia, so I come up with strategies and tactics to be able to get people from where they are to where they want to be. And I use music, I use humour, I use seminars and programs in schools, and I'm all across Australia now in conferences I get invited to as well. But most of the time I'm meeting one-on-one with kids throughout the week, and I love it. Absolutely love it.
And is it a big issue that young people need that kind of help?
I honestly think it's huge. It's huge, and statistics tell us that 1 in 4 Australians are anxious, and a quarter of young Australians are unhappy with their lives, and their personal concern, number one personal concern with Mission Australia statistics said that it's the number one cause of hurt and well-being is stress. To well-being is stress. So there's no official education on stress. There's no official class on how to deal with that. So a life coach is really like, I don't know, creating a little bit more of a tribe with the family to...
And for you as a Christian, Jesus stands at the centre of this.
It's the motivating thing for me personally, you know, and it drives how I see people, you know, and what I choose to focus on and how I value people. And I feel like I need to do that because I feel like I've been given so much grace in my life. It's only natural to do the same.
Matt, thanks for sharing that with us. But just in a sentence, maybe two at the most, just tell us a little bit. If a young person is watching and they feel that they don't count, they're not valued, what would you say to them?
I say, you're a designer. You're an absolute designer. You're powerful. And designers make something with their lives from the raw materials of their life. So your relationships, your experiences, make it a masterpiece. Look at your life around you and know that you have the power to be able to go to someone and ask for help, to be able to use your skills to make something wonderful with your life.